Welcome everyone to another episode of Around the Block Talk. Today we have with us Mr. Shreyash MIshra. He's the managing partner at Cosdec Alpha, which is a global Web3 consulting firm. He has quite a good experience in the field of Web3 and blockchain and has been interacting with the industry uh, from the past few years. So very happy to have you here with us, Shreyash, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Pratik. It's a pleasure being here today with you, and I'm looking forward to interact on a great deal of Web3 topics around what we can do together for enterprises. As you know, my primary job is creating strategies and consultation for implementation for enterprises of mid and large sizes around the world. And given our global presence across the world with a lot of serviceability in the market, we have a lot of not just it's not about just domain experience for us, but it's also about a lot of network effects, a lot of cultural significance that we gather from various markets and various avenues across the globe. And when you put that together and you back it up with research, you start to see trends, you start to see patterns of how Web3 is impacting the world, and moreover, how it will go on to impact in the future. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. That is Web3 for enterprise. And when we look at Web3 for enterprise, uh, when I say enterprise, I mean it could be a non-profit organization, or it could be a mid to large size company, or it could even be an educational institution for that matter. So enterprise of any nature. So when we are looking at adoption of Web3 in these enterprises, I often get asked the question, what is the need to adopt Web3 in the first place? Why should I do it? And my simple answer to it is, had you asked this back to me in 1998 or 97, I would about the internet. I would have told you because it's going to change how you conduct your business, how you interact with your consumers, or for that matter, how you run your own company. And I can say the same for Web3. So one of the misconceptions about Web3, as you might also have encountered over the time, is that people think Web3 is all about crypto and NFTs and images of monkeys and all that. But it's way beyond. It's more about certain fundamental core factors that shape it and technologies that support it. So it's not just crypto and NFTs. It's also blockchain. It's also metaverse. It's to an extent. It's also AI, ML, and IoT, because these things. It's Web3 is a interweaved fabric of these technologies. You cannot simply build on one of these things. You are always building on a multiple level. So when you see that in the context of enterprises, what you start to understand is that there are so many applications around how you can automate your operations, how you can streamline, increase productivity, reduce costs. And the reason to adopt Web3 for different enterprises is, of course, very unique to them, and of course, to an extent, also very different from how two organizations go about it. But if you had to put a general theme around it, it would be in multiple areas, giving more power to your consumers, increasing the efficiency and productivity of your operations, and in turn reducing costs and overheads. And three, being a part of a futuristic trend that's going to inadvertently change how you interact with your internal and external stakeholders. And when I say internal and external stakeholders, that pretty much covers it all. So, in that context, that bullet is coming to you. You can try to dodge it for some time, but eventually you'll have to bite the bullet. So, might as well be proactive in that approach and take on initiatives that you can do right now, so that when the time comes for a full scale adoption, you're ready for it. And that leads me to a second part on how should I adopt Web3 in the first place for an enterprise. So my my advice to anyone who's looking to transform their organization into Web3 is that it's plain and simple. Do not look at changing everything in your organization. Let's analyze and pick one area where the technologies of Web3 will have the most impact today. Test that out, build a team around it, build ideas around it, roll it out in the market, and see how your consumers feel about it. And or maybe if it's your an internal process, roll it out within your company and see how your people feel about it. And then once you've done that, you'll automatically start to see value at different avenues, and you'll come up and say that, oh, I can even automate this, or maybe I can bring a DeFi protocol here to increase my financial productivity. And these sort of things then start to build up. So the question of how should I do it is, it's very simple. First, conduct an organization-wide analysis of your pain points, your goals, your strategic overview, everything. Conduct an analysis, pick the right areas and the most impactful areas today, build a solution around it, design a solution with great depth so that the development is a mere formality. So once you've audited your company, understood your practical use cases, created a solution around it, the only thing that remains is implementing and deploying that solution, which you can do over time with the help of an external agency or perhaps your own team, whatever suits your operations. And then, so when we understand this, we can very simply say that there is a need to adopt Web3 sooner or later, and there are ways on how you can go about it. But if we had to decide what makes a good Web3 operation, what makes that operation successful, I think there are three key factors. One is that the use case you're building on has a real life practical problem that you're solving. It should not be something that you're doing out of hype or doing because a competitor is doing. Like a lot of people are venturing into the metaverse mindlessly without understanding what it entails for them, how sustainable is it in the long term, given their operations and all. So do not mindlessly venture into it because it's a new trend. Analyze your use cases properly, analyze your operations nicely, and then decide on one. That's success factor one. Success factor two would be uh, something I call precision development. So a lot of Web3 is immutable. Given that it's based on the blockchain, it's not very frequently changeable. Once it's deployed on a mainnet or your on like it's out there, once it's out there, there's very few options of changing them. So your development has to be super precise. That you are once you figure out the use case and you've designed a solution, now when you go on to develop this solution, you have to get that step right. You have to ensure, because this is not like making a website that you can keep tweaking every second day. This is more complex, it's more cost intensive to an extent to push those updates. So in that context, you have to keep your planning and strategy to the point so that when you implement, you actually deploy, it's to the point. And so that's the precision development part. And the third most important thing is enrich your community, whether it's your internal employees, whether it's your board of directors, whether it's your consumers. Build a community around your solution, whatever use case you've deployed for. So I don't mean by community you create a fan club and have 1,000 people rave about it. What I mean is these people are primary stakeholders in your solution. They are the ones who've had the pain and they are the ones your solution is addressing. So you need to incorporate them in the development process, in the innovation process. It needs to be community led. That's the whole point of Web3, after all, decentralization and community leadership. So once your community is part of the solution, they automatically also feel a need to, work harder to make your solution a success. And that will also inadvertently help you grow your output, help you grow your capabilities in other areas, because the community of for your first solution will also become a community for of evangelists for your future solutions. And that's important, because today, in a world which is so socially active, everything depends, not everything, but a lot of things depend on the mood or the output or the understanding of the crowd. So if you have that approach, if you are actually addressing a practical problem, you are building it right, and you are leading the community and supporting it, then eventually you will succeed in whatever solution you deploy, whether you're transforming one area of your company or you're transforming an entire internet company to a Web3 first company. Ideally, I do not recommend going Web3 first. What I recommend is start with smaller departments and build on forward. So I think that practically summarizes what Web3 for enterprises looks like, and I think that's a good starting point for further discussions for between you and me, and even with senior executives in enterprises. That's where we start building for enterprise.
Right, Shreyash. I think that's very true. The thing that you've mentioned, that we must first figure out what for problems are we able to solve with this, then eventually build a community, then and even understand the pain points or the problems that these early adopters would face, and then accordingly build a product. So, since we're discussing about Web3 for enterprise, so what are the use cases do you see today that are being solved by Web3 in the domain of enterprises?
See, there are various use cases as per industries, as per the types of companies. But if I had to categorize, most use cases fall into two primary categories. One is automation of internal operations, and the other is higher consumer engagement. So, one of the things we do at Cosdec Alpha is we tell our clients that when we work with you, we leverage our networks, domain expertise, research to do only two things: drive deeper consumer relationships and build your enterprise value. So that's where the use case primarily lies today in the Web3, because the ecosystem is not at its peak. There is a lot of enrichment that is still left, and I wouldn't say that metaverse is a use case, or crypto is a use case. These are applications across different domains, and you have to very 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 significantly analyze these things before saying that, oh, this is a use case for me, because what might be a use case for Shreyash wouldn't be a use case for Pratik. And there is no one size fits all answer to this question, honestly. But if I had to point out some applications you could enter, DeFi protocols where you're investing in crypto as a asset class, or maybe you're building a metaverse for engaging with your consumers. Maybe you are releasing collectibles and loyalty points as NFTs, or you are you're automating your supply chain. You're making your supply chain more transparent, more resilient. You are doing internal education for your employees where they are on board, they are at the same level. You're flattening enterprise hierarchies to have lower bureaucracy, higher output and productivity. So these are various things that most organizations have worked with, have tried to venture into. But again, like I said, it's very organization specific, it's unique to the industry as well as unique to the organization you work with.
Right, indeed. So, from the use cases that I see, so one kind of a use case, as you mentioned, would be to interact better with their customers and engage them more through
Right.
probably metaverse or some of these technologies. Another use case would be to interact with different enterprises. So, let's say there's in the banking system, one bank is putting their database on blockchain. So the entire ecosystem now needs to probably onboard onto the blockchain to be able to share this data. So
Right.
in terms of that kind of an implementation where an enterprise is trying to communicate or transact with other enterprises. What kind of use cases have you encountered, and what kind of things are happening there?
See, there is a greater need for alliance at the moment in at industry levels, because there have been alliances where even banks in India decided to create a blockchain solution for interoperability between banks, but that never reached a consumer facing stage. With that, I am not even sure if it is still valid in inside banks, but for most banks I know they don't have that system yet. So the application on industry levels requires a greater alliance. We've grown up seeing companies within the same industry competing as if they are going out at war. You're not at war with each other. Your competition is about creating more value. It's about enriching the lives of the people you serve. And if you serve the same people and you're really consumer centric, then you must collaborate to offer that value to the consumer. Of course, there's a whole enterprise issue there that I will be cutting my costs, I will lose my competitive edge and those things. And if your edge is so small that you are all that you if a simple collaboration will cut off your edge, you never had that edge in the first place. Building true competitive edges is about building innovative solutions. It's about tapping untapped market needs. It's about a deeper understanding of the consumer. It's what what we call consumer empathy. You know, that's at the core of it. And if you have consumer empathy, you also have an idea of how to differentiate where you can collaborate and where you can compete. And if you look at Web3 is a lot about collaboration. It's the whole point of decentralization brings in higher collaboration. So, but you also have to see that it should not risk the pace of innovation. You know, if you create an alliance of banks, for example, since you are on that example, and you inadvertently turn it into a DAO of sorts, you know, there has to be a decision making mechanism which goes beyond one bank is equal to one vote. You have to look at merits. You still have to look at the share of what that initiative impacts the consumer for that bank. Because if you're absolutely flat, you will at some point risk stopping the innovation within an alliance also. So for alliances, it's important that they identify areas of collaboration versus competition, and within the that area of collaboration, they decide mechanisms of how to collaborate. Because the problem of losing a competitive edge or not coming to market, the that problem arises where you are not sure about how that mechanism would work, or how are you competing or not. So the moment this is clarified, you can very easily bring that whole thing to market and actually impact the consumers that you so care about. You know, I think that's where the area lies.
Right, that's very true for particularly for the use cases of enterprise. It's very important to come to a common understanding, to form an alliance, and also in terms of the technology end of it, we need common standards, we need common platforms to be able to do this, and
Yeah.
more so, there has to be regulations to support this kind of a structure, this kind of an ecosystem. So, what are your views on that, and what are the factors that are required today to be able to successfully create these kind of enterprise ecosystems on blockchain?
So, like I told you, first, of course, we need to understand the whole collaboration versus competition point. Once we figure that out, I think then it goes to a higher application level where you are not just interacting with each other, but you're also interacting with governments, and you're also interacting with a very large crowd. Because, say, if you combine the customer base of top 20 banks in India, okay, that's almost 70-80% of the total market, and that's massive. Okay. 80% of India is huge. That's like almost two and a half times of the entire United States. So in countries like India, you need the government to step in and clearly specify what this means for these alliances. For what I know today, the government has been skeptical about what regulations apply to these things, because honestly, we are still, let's, in the context of banks, we're still struggling with NBFCs. There's a hot debate of neobanks and NBFCs. What's their operational landscape? So take that and then take a whole another level of new technologies bringing in, and it's complex. Even it's highly complex for RBI or the finance ministry also to make those decisions, because it's not just about two or three stakeholders. It's not about four or five cities. It's about 80 crore people. It's about 800 million across India, or maybe any country for that example. So from the regulatory perspective also, people, are very easy on blaming the government. Oh, the government is not clear, they don't understand this. But that's not true. I know for a fact that the government has committees, has councils on this. Senior partners from my own company are part of these councils, which is working on understanding and creating these innovations and creating regulatory mechanisms. So when I look at that, what I understand is that there is a need for higher industry collaboration of governments and industry leaders. And I'm not talking about just the billionaires. Okay, that's one part of it. They are of course very senior to any of us, and they're building great things. But they also have to collaborate with people at the ground level. You know, people who might not be on the front page of Forbes, but are still building a great part of these ecosystems. And that's where I think you'll have more clarity on what an alliance looks like. So, if I have to answer the success factors for a good alliance, it will, of course, be identifying areas of collaboration, working in tandem with the government to identify regulations and playing fields for these alliances. And third, it's all about having experts and really knowledgeable people on board. And by no means am I saying that senior executives of banks or an FMCG company or any other company for that matter are not experienced or knowledgeable enough. But we have to accept that these people are not experts in Web3 or blockchain or any of these technologies. And so, what they need to do is they need to collaborate with people who do this, people who do this day and night. And I'm not just saying consulting firms like Cosdec Alpha, because I'm also saying about individuals. Okay, there are a lot of individuals I know personally who work with the government, with institutions to craft their strategies and all that. So these alliances then need to bring in a technical, more sound mind that can help them guide through this entire journey, from right from forming the alliance to delivering that product to the market. And that's a fairly long journey, and you need people at all points, you need stakeholders at all points. Also, this goes beyond uh, the purview of large management consulting firms or large IT firms, because they also work like these institutions. Okay, I think they need more specialized approaches. They need boutique consulting firms. They need specialists in the area with personal, like who work at a personal level. Then you need government officials at some point. You need people who have significant management as well as technical experience. And then when you collaborate within this group and you bring in the whole institutional advisory, you bring in the whole institutional point of view to the alliance, that's where you build something that's sustainable in the long run, that's free of competitive harshness, it's free of, you know unsustainable motives or initiatives. And then then that all that ties up to create a more consumer centric, but also something that has a higher consumer impact. Okay. So yeah, that's where I think there's somewhere around those areas is the sweet spot of creating a successful alliance.
Right, indeed, a lot of collaboration, a lot of support is needed to be able to develop this. So also now you're also mentioning that how these products or how these solutions can reach the masses. And now, even to reach the masses, there are certain challenges today. Many possibilities in the future, but some challenges today. Again, in terms of regulations, also in terms of the education of these products and what they can do. And also, one major roadblock in terms of adoption is that you have to introduce these new concepts, these new kinds of services to people. Uh, so how do you think that these challenges are going to get overcome, and what kind of work do you see happening around that?
See, I definitely see a need for general awareness campaigns and initiatives because people need to understand that crypto is not a money making scheme. It's not something that, doubles your money in 1 year or some sort of, gamble. It's nor is Web3 all about crypto in the first place. So we need to get rid of these misconceptions at a general mass level. And one of the initiatives we take was as a company is what we call the Youth Prodigy Program, where we work with teenagers up to the age of 20 to educate them on what lies further. Because one of the things we noticed was that these people are the most active investors and people who interact the most in the ecosystem, and they do not understand that well. They are prone to false advertising, they are prone to misunderstood return concepts and all those things. So one of the things we do is we create these we have created this initiatives where consultants from our company, senior partners from our company, actually work with teenagers to help them understand what lies ahead. Because for us also, it's not about profits from a project. We'll get that either way if we educate the youth or not. But it's also about bringing up the talent pool, bringing up the future innovators up to speed with what the ecosystem is. This ecosystem has to evolve. If there are so many challenges and roadblocks, as you said, if these roadblocks are to be cleared, you need these guys at a young age to start thinking about it. Start questioning the status quo, start innovating in very little small ways. I mean, I don't say you go and create a cryptocurrency. What I say is understand what you can do. you know Decide why you want to have Bitcoin over Ethereum or any other crypto for that matter, or maybe why do you want to play a game in the metaverse and earn via it. you know so there are these things that once they start understanding, once they're part of that ecosystem, they know what to build on it. They know they can, do something more with it. So that's one on the awareness side. The other thing that know about when we talk about senior executives, there is a lot of problems with shareholders. Okay, especially with large companies that I've worked with, because they're also answerable to the shareholders. There's share price tied up to their actions, and what I think these companies need to do is educate their shareholders that this is the initiative we are taking, and not just release a PR that hey, we are doing this, blah blah blah. XYZ company ventured into the metaverse. That's fine. That's good for news making. But I think a more interactive shareholder engagement is required, where the company is clarifying its standpoint, its understanding of these futuristic technologies. I mean, you don't have to talk about your hiring strategy for now, or how you're compensating um, post, like how are giving severance packages and all that. But I think you still need to talk about how you're using blockchain, or what are you doing with crypto, why are you venturing into the metaverse, And this needs to be told to the investor. Now, of course, there's also that argument that a lot of retail investors do not actively engage with the stocks they buy. But you also have to understand that if you're putting it out there, eventually they will. And if you're playing the long game with these technologies, your share price will catch up to it. Okay. And I think there also a thing with adoption is that you need to have that risk taking ability. And okay, maybe for a week or so, there will be a dip in my share prices, and my shareholders won't be happy with it. But I am sure I can communicate this to them that why this matters to us, and also why it matters for creating value for them. And once you start doing that, I mean, see, in the end, whether you're talking about retail share buyers, you're talking about institutional investors, you're talking about FIIs, or you're talking about kids off the block, you're talking about governments, take anyone for that matter. It's all about communicating one simple thing. How are you creating value for them? I mean, if you remember, after the demonetization happened in India, there was this huge wave of digital payments and a surge of white people were going with Paytm and Google Pay and UPI for that matter. And when you see that, I mean, there was one simple thing that I don't have cash in hand. This technology can help me pay with, and it solves my problem. It's done within seconds. I don't have to worry about it. It's secure. People still had, uh, doubts about it, but you know, today if you see that thing has caught up. I mean, yesterday I saw street vendor selling peanuts, accepting Google Pay, and I think that's a massive, massive testament to what India has done in the space of digital payments. We just have to look at that model and do the same for Web3, and do this in a secure, regulated, stable way. The most important thing is creation of stable value, sustainable value. It's not about profits or short term returns. It's more about creating sustainable value and communicating that this sustainable value is here for you, and it's going to help you build better, do better. Once people at decision making positions start to accept this fact, they start to communicate this, I think we will be far ahead in what we are today, and we'll start adopting faster, we'll start innovating faster. And I think India, out of all countries in the world, has the highest potential to innovate and adopt Web3. We are a young nation. We are absolutely geared for success. I mean, there is absolutely no question in my head that we are not ready for it. The whole point is there are people at very various levels who need to start communicating this value. People like you and me need to do it at various levels. And that's exactly why we're doing this program today, to communicate the value of why people should look at Web3 and how they should start, getting into it.
Right, indeed. And I do firmly believe that a lot of potential in India, in particularly in emerging market, because this is a decentralized kind of a revolution. This is not happening at one place. This is happening all over the place. And the more population, the more talent pool you have, the more opportunities are there for you in this. Definitely a
I
great
mean,
place.
just we joke this around in our company that if tomorrow government says that everyone has to be a Bitcoin miner, Bitcoin will have 1 billion mines overnight, and you know, so that's the kind of potential we have. You can have 1 billion people on a decentralized platform. You understand the power of decision making, innovation that you can generate overnight. All it needs is a little push by someone influential enough to tell the people this is for you. That's it.
Indeed, that's very true. So also, Shesh, we would like to know what kind of work you're doing at Codec Alpha, and what kind of consulting projects or what are you doing at this
Okay,
point?
so at Cosdec Alpha, we are a lot about strategy of Web3. Okay, everything around us is built on strategy. Of course, we are on implementation side. We have a lot of developers and network partners who develop these solutions with us. But more often we are like a think tank for the future that an organization can work with. Because we, and we quite proudly say this because I personally believe that in Web3, in blockchain, or any futuristic technology, your thought leadership is more important than your developmental leadership. Your technical expertise can be built, it can be improved, but your strategy, your planning, your understanding of the domain has to be top notch. And that's where we work with organizations at different levels. We've partnered with governments, we've partnered with, we're internationally located. We have three offices internationally, and we serve more than 50 countries. So that's why I said I understand a lot of cultural significance of Web3 across the world and how it's changing what we do as people, as organizations. So when you put together all that, uh, as I previously mentioned, we quite simply communicate our proposition to people. We work with enterprise leaders to drive deeper consumer relationships and improve their enterprise value by leveraging our networks, our domain expertise, and our research. So, when you put together, we are simply your partners for futuristic growth. Okay, and my projects are multivariate, and this is this is on the website. I don't even remember all the projects we've done over the time. But if you look at what we do as a whole, you'll see we've done a lot of strategy work. We've worked with NFT collections, we've worked with multinational corporations for smaller and larger adoptions. We've worked with uh, even for buy side M&A of Web3 companies, investing in Web3 companies, formation of DAOs, uh, creation of NFT assets, metaverse creation, AR VR stuff, automation of internal operations. So these are so many things we've worked with over time. There are senior partners, of course, there are consultants who do this work day and night. And by God's grace, I have a team that's so strong they know what they're doing. To an extent that these projects feel almost automated by themselves. That and this I again relies on the innovation we do internally. There's a lot of frameworks that we design, and there's a lot of uh, systems we've created over the time to execute these services, and that flows through. Okay, so this is not by any means that I'm talking about why we are good enough. What I'm trying to communicate is that when we are working with enterprises, this is what we do. We create systems and frameworks for them so that there is a strategic understanding, a strategic collaboration within the company, within with its external stakeholders, to keep creating that value for a sustainable long time. And then, of course, there's a whole other point of bringing in ESG and having it sustainable environmentally also. So you must have heard that blockchain consumes more energy than the whole of Argentina. You keep coming across such things. So for global corporations, it's also important that we are environment friendly. We are also contributing to the impact of we have on the environment and the planet as a whole. So overall, that's where our expertise lies, and to bring all of these factors, management factors. So basically, if I have to tell you, we bring in management and technical expertise, and we have one of the largest networks of advisors all around the world who are very senior executives in companies like CEOs of multinational corps and all that. And we bring in this technical and management expertise with the help of our advisors, shape it together to create a strategy for Web3 transformation. Web3 transformation can be a transformation of one department or the entire organization. And then, of course, at the behest of the organization, we also go on to implement it.
Right, indeed. So essentially, you're providing a Web3 expertise and Web3 thought leadership to be
Right.
to help these companies to understand what problems they can actually solve with Web3,
Yes.
and then
Strategy
go about
consultation,
it.
basically.
Right, indeed. So again, this space, this entire is quite new and very so even for your expertise, you need to, I believe, as a firm, you need to keep exploring what new things can be done and what kind of new implementations are out there. So how do you manage to, given such an environment of very high disruption and very high pace of change, how do you manage to keep up with this as a company?
Oh, that's a very good question. I mean, we've dabbled this within ourselves for a very long time. That how do we keep that up? Because, as you rightly said, it's so highly disruptive. You read something today, you wake up 2 nights later, and you're that's already old. You know. So, one there are two key areas to it. One is that we have a great network of specialists and advisors, like I said, and even partners across the world who keep up in a very specific domain. So, for example, I have a partner who's into DeFi protocols of NFTs. Then there is a partner who's into pure solidity development. So these people track changes within their domains. They are up to date. They keep us up to date. And when we are doing projects, we bring in their understanding, we bring in their expertise on that particular topic. So it's like a global spread of specialized information flow coming into us, and that's where we are able to deliver at a global level. I mean, delivering inside India is hard enough. So imagine the complexities that arise across the globe. Okay. And that's part A. And part B is our, of course, a fantastic internal research team. They are continuously on the job, understanding new things, writing research papers, publishing content, to an extent, even educating senior executives. Like for myself, since I'm the global managing partner, my job is quite administrative and operational at a global level. I do take certain projects, but they are very minimal. So my exposure to innovation is also limited to an extent. So as a practice, there is somebody who will come and inform me about the latest developments every weekend. You know, so it's also important for guys like me who do not actively build these technologies to keep up with it. So, you know, like day before yesterday, somebody was telling me about a stable coin for Euro launched by Circle. And it has a lot of complexities around it on how a Euro based stable coin will work. So, this is also something that I need to understand. So, that's what we bring in together. We merge the expertise of our networks and partners with the work of our internal research team, combine it, use it for products, uh, projects we build, as well as for internal education for, like I said, for the Youth Prodigy program where we are informing the youth. Because we have to stay on top of all these things all the time to ensure that we are delivering that value. And it's a grueling process, to be honest. There is nothing sweet or nothing easy about it, but it's something required. It's the medicine you have to taste. So and it's, after a point it starts getting fun to learn all these things by yourself.
Right, indeed. So that the kind of constant upskilling that is required, the kind of information that needs to inflow. So that is something you probably need to imbibe in the very values of the company that
Yes, and
need
then
constant
that's what we
upskilling.
do. We actually promote entrepreneurial thinking in our people, that you know imagine whatever work you're doing, whatever project you are running, whatever department you are heading. Okay, you are running a company by yourself. Even if you have none of it, you're a very junior research analyst, you're still running a research operation for one person. Think like an entrepreneur. Okay, and because I want people at the lowest level of the hierarchy to start leading these things, because this needs a bottom up approach. If my guys at the ground know it, even if I am 1 month late to the development, it's fine. But it's very important that the very people who work at the ground, who work day and night to create these solutions, know what they are talking about. And that comes with an entrepreneurial mindset that, hey, this is my business, it is my operation, I am the caretaker of it, I am the primary responsible person, and I must deliver at industry standards and beyond. So for that, I need to constantly learn. When and we've communicated this over and over again over the years, and it's I'm telling you the results are fantastic. There's a fantastic team who understands this, and over time they've even become innovators themselves. They don't need a specialized innovation department now.
Right, indeed. With that, Shreyas, thank you very much for appearing on the show today. It was a very insightful and very interesting talk with you today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.